Hey everybody, we're back at it with another show, another episode of the Pro Painter Network. Told you guys earlier this week that Jeff and I were going to be going live on Thursday. So look at that. Here I am delivering on that promise.
Here we are. Here we are.
How are you feeling today, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been a wild day, but a great day. Yeah, just a lot to
Life's
do.
been full, huh?
Yeah, yeah. It's like kind of the week before Thanksgiving, things are starting to kind of slow down in a way, but we always have some craziness going on and lots of fun stuff. We just pushed a big update from a product perspective this morning, so that's awesome. Always fun to see and get some good feedback already from customers. And yeah, yeah,
It's always good. It's good when you push an update and you don't like break the branch and everything stops working. You start getting panic emails.
yeah,
Good to hear that it was a good update.
yeah. We've had that before. We did have one small little thing that only we would recognize, but you fix it real quick and get it back out there. So
There you go. What more can you ask for? So I was really happy that you and I had a chance to connect. For anyone who's tuning into this, if you guys have done any events with me in the past, or if you went to the PCA Expo last year, you might have seen Jeff and I collaborating on a couple of things before. Jeff and I share, I would say some common like feelings and approaches to what we like about events and doing like little pop-up shops and things together. So I'm gonna just lightly announce that I'm sure we're gonna have some sort of mischief or shenanigans we'll get up to again together, probably in spring whenever PCA Expo heads back our way. But Jeff, do you mind doing like a quick self-introduction for anyone in the audience who's not familiar with you?
not at all, not at all. So my name is Jeff Wraley, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Groundwork. We are a virtual sales tool. So I know that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but if you are a user of Groundwork, say what's up in the live stream comments here. I got to figure out how to pull that up and be on this thing and that thing at the same time. But we have a good concentration of customers in the painting industry. My background is more in the contracting industry, general contracting, but we love our painting friends. So, and as I started the concept of the business and everything, it just kind of came to be that, hey, this is a really powerful tool for painters to understand what a lead might have in mind about their project before a sales appointment, before running across town, spending time, gas money, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's really think of what we do as like a sales efficiency tool. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of relationship building, building trust, but also just like running a really efficient process. So if you're about efficient processes,
that's that engineer.
That's right.
So real quick sideline, since we've got a couple comments coming in. If you look at your screen, Jeff, on the upper right-hand corner, you should see a little bubble that says comments. And we should be able to get comments from, I think we're streaming to Facebook and YouTube and a couple different places right now.
Got it, yes.
So that is one of the things that I love about you, Jeff. So Jeff comes from an engineering background for you guys. And so which means that we have a lot of fun talking about all different types of processes, environmental engineering in businesses, sales engineering, and that sort of thing. But one of the things that I think is really prevalent in a lot of engineering type thinking and philosophy is the idea of leverage, right? We want to create and design tools that are going to take whatever piece of effort we have the ability to put out and really magnify that effort so that it has as much impact as possible. And so I always like to mention that because at the end of the day, Groundwork specifically is a really, really powerful sales tool. But what it does really well is it creates a massive amount of leverage really early on in the sales process. And that's what I wanted to bring Jeff on to talk about today. I'm actually pretty jazzed up talking about marketing. I've got a couple more guests coming on. We're talking a lot about early in the funnel marketing, how to be more effective earlier on so that you're upping your conversion rate. So that's what I think is the really big problem that a lot of contractors are facing right now. It's wintertime. Everyone's panicking a little bit. People are throwing tons of money at marketing funnels. And the issue is that people are throwing a lot of dollars at some of these marketing funnels and they don't have the right amount of leverage. So the conversions a little bit further down aren't coming in the way that they want. And it becomes a lot of wasted effort because it's like we keep cranking and cranking and cranking against things and we're not seeing the impact down the line that we really want to see. tools like Groundwork are really specifically designed for helping increase the amount of leverage and the amount of persuasive influence that you have on those prospects earlier in that pipeline. So really quick, talk us through very specific to Groundwork, actually, how does Groundwork function in a sales pipeline or a sales funnel? Because I think that's a really good foundational piece for us to start with. And we can start talking about really like the guiding principles or why we designed that tool the way that we did and what makes for an effective sales process, especially early upstream.
Yeah. So really what the product does is it's a video-based sales tool. So our job is to help painting contractors get leads from the very tippy top of the funnel into a serious sales conversation as quickly and efficiently as possible. And the way we do that is through walking the homeowner through a way to submit a video of their project. So I know many contractors are probably familiar with, hey, send me a picture of the room that you're thinking about getting painted. You know, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, we say a video is worth 1,000,000, right? So, and there's some specific things that we do in the process that allow a homeowner to really start to explain what they're looking for. We ask them to interact with the video that they're creating and talk through the project just like they would if you were there with them. So you get a full-on project walkthrough as a first touch. So kind of some of the things you were talking about is like, I think what's important about what we do is it's all branded for who the contractors we work with. So I saw Steve Burnett say what's up, and so like when we start working with Steve, it's like, hey, here's your system. Like, here's how you can run your sales process. And kind of put your best foot forward in some of those first touch points. So that's a big part of what we do. We're video based, and some of the things you were mentioning. We like to think about opportunities to create like aha moments in the process of like, wow, that was nice. In like the sales and marketing game, especially now, recession, all that talk's going on, but at least lead flow slowing down over the holidays, like some of that, like we're in the wintertime, things tend to slow down for a lot of contractors. So the name of the game is differentiation, right? Like if somebody calls 3 different people out to their house, like how quick are you going to get to them? How pleasant is the experience? How much of a guide are you in the sales process quicker than everybody else?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we think about, like, how we can be an asset to contractors and painters who are out there kind of with a little bit of that slower season and, with the, recession that's maybe started, maybe not started, maybe never going to start, who knows? But those are some questions that, and some of the ways that we think about building our product and helping contractors fit in and how they can really get leads through the funnel.
So when I'm listening to you talk through that, what I'd really like to do for our listeners is talk about what I love about you and what I really like about Groundwork is that you're hitting so many of the notes that I know are incredibly important and impactful for that sales process for contractors. But I'd really like for us to talk specifically about those different key variables so that people can take the principles that we know and they're deployed in Groundwork, but you can take these principles and apply them with any kind of tools that you're using. So obviously some tools are going to work better for it than others, but the principles that we're talking through are the things that you guys as contractors should be thinking about. You should be really emphasizing in your sales process in order to make sure that all of your marketing spend and all of that effort is being applied to the absolute most advantage to you that it can be. So there are a few things that you talked about. The first one that I want to touch on is, what's the number one complaint that everybody has about contractors? Do you know what I'm talking about, Jeff?
Well, probably they don't. I called them and they never got back to me.
That's exactly it. That is the number one complaint that everybody has about contractors is, oh my God, I keep calling all these contractors. No one picks up the phone.
They didn't even give me a quote, like even after the sales appointment, it's like, oh gosh,
I can't even get an appointment on the books, right? So we know that there are a lot of things that people have been putting in place to make this pain point in the sales process or in the prospecting process a lot easier. Some of those might be having a scheduling platform embedded directly in your website. So people are actually able to go and just schedule an estimate, or they're able to schedule a really quick virtual estimate or a phone call or something like that.
Right.
That's really key because it's now removing this hurdle where people feel like they're not able to get in touch with you quickly enough.
Yeah.
And you got to think about how consumers are how we're used to buying things these days, right? Like whenever you need a book that you've been thinking about, what do?
You just Google it and go to Amazon and buy it.
In
10 minutes. Yeah.
It shows up at your door in a day, maybe 4 hours sometimes. So the sales cycle has increased in speed and efficiency so much in every other part of our lives that contracting's been kind of dragging behind. And so now we're starting to see and needing to adopt these ways of increasing that. So there's that speed component of it. And we know that from an effective sales perspective, the faster that somebody responds, the more likely it is that you're going to close that sale. The first person to respond to someone who's looking for leads is almost certainly going to be the one that closes and books that job. So whether you're doing a booking platform, whether you are using some VAs to make sure that when people call, the phone's getting picked up within 10 seconds, calls are never getting dropped, voicemails are never getting hit. Groundwork specifically has a unique value proposition there because whenever people are coming in through the website, they're usually booking an appointment or they're submitting a request for some information, and the software immediately starts to interact with and engage with your client. So or with your prospect. And this is really, really helpful because people are actually feeling like they're making some progress towards getting to the end result. The second that somebody starts filling out a little bit of information, the second that somebody takes the time to take a couple photos and a video, they're bought in, right? Like there's been effort applied towards getting information from you. It's very similar to almost selling someone something really small at the front end. If somebody gives you a little bit of money, or if they give you a little bit of time and effort, psychologically, they're way more engaged and they're way more likely to follow through to the end of that pipeline. So the efficiency of having a bot or having a system that's automatically doing this once it's plugged into your website just speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is there's a lot of different ways to kind of keep things moving at a quick clip. There's there's a lot of different tools, widgets. You could even go in the painting industry. Like there are some pricing calculator things out there, right? And some people love them, some people hate them. I would say that a lot of people hate them more than love them. And I think the reason is because it's so impersonal. It's just kind of commoditizes the service that you bring.
Right.
So I think when you can mix in some of those like automated things, but still make them feel like they're your company, like you're involved as a person at some level, that is where the magic happens, because you get that like interpersonal trust type of thing.
Right. It's not a robot, right?
It's not
purely form. So tell me a little bit, I know this because I've seen the software before, but tell me about whenever like a customer is engaging with Groundwork, they're kind of bumped into this little portal like, hey, send us a little bit of information. What's the first thing that they see? What's the first thing contractors usually set up for their customers to see?
So a lot of contractors have started to put a video, what we call an explainer video or a welcome video, inside of the software. So we have a really simple script, and we encourage people, hey, make it authentic. You don't need a fancy set, or anything like that. Just be yourself on a job site, at your office, at your house. Say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm the owner of XYZ Painting. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us and share your project with us. You're going to be walked through a system where we can get some information about your project, and then you can upload a video so we can see the project area that you have in mind. This allows us to give you a really quick feedback and helps us understand how we might be able to help you. Go ahead and click the button below and get started. So it's a very personalized, kind of just friendly thing. It's not hard to pull off. Make it as easy as possible. And like
Yeah.
I mean, think about that, right? Like the typical contact us box, I've said it a million times, there's no joy in the contact us box. Like there
None.
just isn't. It's just kind of like, where does my stuff go? You know?
And it's frustrating because so many people don't even have like an automated response set up, right?
Yeah,
There's not like a confirmation email. There's not
right.
like, if there is, that's great. That's a step in the right direction. But like, how much better is it for you and your end user experience if you immediately get a text message to your phone that's like, we see you. Please
Yeah,
give us a little more information, right?
yep,
Like, tell us a bit more. We're curious. We're engaged. We're here for you to have this conversation, which is
yep,
what people want when they're like looking for a service provider. They don't want to just kick information out into the ether and like
yeah.
sit on their hands.
And more and more going to kind of like the new school way of things, like more and more they don't necessarily want to like sit in a meeting. You know,
Right.
like everybody's got enough, meetings going on in their life. They got to take their kid to practice. They got to do this and that. It's like, hey, we're
Right.
going to come see you at 2:00. Depending on where they are in the funnel, right? If they're like serious, and they're just trying to write you a check, like they might want to say like, take measurements today.
Yeah.
But the large majority of people are higher in the sales funnel, right? They're in that consideration phase, or maybe just exploration. So there's I think there's a lot to be said for personalized experience that kind of matches the way that people want to get started with their project,
Right.
just given the day and age of where we are in 2022. And we are working very hard to continue to build stuff that just like matches the way that contractors want to do their process, pushing them a little bit.
Yeah.
Certainly pushing them, but in a way that's easy and effective for homeowners and convenient for homeowners.
One of the things that I really like that you were saying right there is talking about the differences between where potential prospects are in their buyer's journey at the point where they get in contact with you, right? Because I do think that that's a really key piece that prior to now, before we had the tech that we have right now, that was really just lost in translation until you could get somebody out on a job site and you had a better idea of like where they were, what were they thinking, what was going on. And so there's a lot of, sales principles and tactics that you and I were talking about before we hopped on that are all geared towards how are you reading your potential customer? Like what information are they giving you? What are they telling you about what's important to them? Why they're getting the work done, what their urgency is, what kind of tensions they have, what sort of anxieties are there. All of those things are really critical pieces to being able to not just sell effectively, but to produce a job and a service in a way that people are going to be happy with on the other side, right? And so prior to now, before we had these virtual sales tools at our disposal, it was like you had to schedule an in-person, you had to show up, and then you had to begin that entire process of reading your customer, reading your potential prospect. And that's sometimes really hard to train and equip our sales personnel to. So that was something that I'm going to bring up. I don't know if you hate it when I say this or not about Groundwork, but when I was finding out more about Groundwork and how it works, I told Jeff, I was like, oh man, you've taken like blind dating for prospects. Like everyone has just been blind dating their prospects. It's just like a random person's going to show up. We're going to talk. We're going to see, is there chemistry here?
Yeah.
Are we vibing? Are we on the same page? I was like, you have created this way. So now we're not blind dating our prospects anymore.
Yeah.
We've got that OkCupid experience going on, right? There's a little bit of eHarmony happening here where it's like, tell me a little bit more. Show me some videos. I'm going to show you some videos so who's showing up at your door, right? And it sounds silly, but the truth is that the reason that that's been so effective in the online dating sphere where the stakes are incredibly high is that all of that builds trust, right? All of that's like familiarity. I've got an idea, I've got an opinion, I'm comfortable with moving on to this next step. So I mean, like, I don't know, the Tinder, the eHarmony of the contracting jobs.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. I think there's the truth of the matter is there's a lot of analogies. the other analogy I'm going to draw to online dating, which I've been married for 13 years, so I have no clue what online dating really looks like, other than just like, pop culture references and whatnot. But the other difference is I've got a buddy lives out West Coast, and he recently got engaged, and it's like, oh, how'd you meet her? And online dating, and so like that 5 years ago, 10 years ago was like, what? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's just kind of how it happens now, right? Like, so there's just, it's another example of how human behavior shifts.
Yeah.
And
I think that's like that exact parallel is virtual selling, right?
Yeah.
Like we're doing that in all of the different components of our lives. Not only are people used to buying virtually, dating virtually, like how many people start dating virtually? Funny story for you guys. I don't know how many of you guys have heard this, but my husband and I, you know where we met? It wasn't online dating, but we did meet on nextdoor.com.
That's fantastic.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that's real weird.
Nextdoor, that's where it's at. It's connecting people together. Right?
You should write a book or something on dating.
Oh my God. So weird.
No? Okay.
But yeah, it's virtual selling is now much more common, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a hot topic lately too. Like who can do virtual sales? Who can do virtual estimates? Is it effective? Does it work? And I think that what we've arrived at is this conclusion that you're all selling virtually. You are all doing virtual sales of some kind. Now, whether you're taking that all the way through to the point where you're video chatting and providing an estimate virtually before ever showing up on the job site, that might not be how far you're taking it, but all of these initial steps are a form of virtual sales. And you guys got to figure out how to do that effectively and what works, because it's the expectation now. You can't get away from it. Like times have changed, right?
Yeah, I think what's interesting to think about is just kind of a little bit of like the power dynamic that's changed, right? So
that's a good point.
He who has all the information has all the power, right? And the fact of the matter is that whether it's good information or bad information, a homeowner can equip themselves with a per square foot price or whatever for their project. And even if they think they have good information, they think that they don't need you in a way, right? So if that is the case, then you have to prove to them that there's a better way than just like going to Google to get this answer quick. Like maybe I can answer your questions quick.
Right.
Maybe I can give you the information you're looking for, get you where you want to go quick.
Right.
I think that's the type of thinking that everybody needs to have in mind, is like, how can I be the guide in the process and like kind of coach, educate, provide the information quickly and easily to my prospective customer in a way that they want to consume it, because that they kind of have a little bit more of the power, whereas before, back in the day, it's like, I don't know what it costs to do this thing. I better call a couple contractors and they'll tell me all I need to know.
Right.
The world's changed a whole lot since then.
I think the point about the power dynamic is so important. And I think that a lot of the time we're really not thinking in those terms. And I think that there's a few different ways that manifests during a sales process. So you're totally right that, whoever has the most information is always going to have the upper hand. And the problem that we face as businesses and as salespeople and marketers is that as a professional, you always have more information. All of the details about how you perform work, the quality that you're bringing versus what someone else is bringing. You have all of the information about what things cost and what your margins are, how the best way to get this thing done is. The person that you're trying to sell to doesn't know any of those things. And that means that they're in an incredibly intimidating and vulnerable position. And that's why people hate being sold to, right? They hate that feeling of like the snake oily, like somebody's going to trick me into something because I don't know. It's a very, very vulnerable spot to be.
Right.
And that's why we have to be super proactive to build that trust and make them feel comfortable as early on as possible. And a really huge part of that is, dripping the information to them in a way that's not overwhelming, but is
Right.
making them feel like they're on stronger footing, is making them feel better equipped. And it's not just technical information, right? A lot of this is like, who are you as a professional? Do
Yep.
people trust you? Do
That's
you
right.
do good work? You know, how do you show up in the world? And so when you have these tools that early on in your sales process are letting people know that you're getting in touch with them quickly, that they can see your face, they can tell things are branded, they can tell things are planned and thought out, you know, those are all really powerful signals that people are hungrily looking for to make them feel more comfortable and more well equipped to make a decision. So
Yep.
they're never going to hurt you, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, and some of it's subconscious too. I've recognized myself, going to name a different, a retailer's website or something like that. Like we judge that experience so fast. Like, it's like, is it convenient? Do I know where to, do I know where to click? Am I going to get where I need to go? A lot of times that judgment call from a customer or a buyer, potential buyer is very, very fast.
Yep.
So, there's just like a ton of just certainly people smarter than I am, studied what that looks like from a marketing perspective. But it's also true from a sales perspective. People just want to like gain trust early. Like we were talking a little about like first touch interactions and like how that can be utilized. Like, I mean, one, you got to have a system to get back to people when they reach out to you and say, I might want to pay you money for something.
Yeah.
That's one part of it. But I mean, I think just like friendliness is underrated. Like how can we help? In my business, we like do a lot of demand gen. So like not everybody realizes that they are doing some sort of virtual sales and like should probably think about it, or at least I think they should. But like if you're doing some sort of marketing and your phone's ringing, like people are like asking you to help them. Like they have already admitted there's a problem.
Right.
Already have said, I need help by the fact of picking up the phone. So like, hey, how can we help? How are you hoping we could help?
Yeah.
Like some of those like key early questions, just show some empathy, show some like just emotional intelligence, and you can get a lot quicker. You can build trust quicker when you start to ask those smart questions.
And then we have to ask ourselves those questions about like, what is the most effective way for somebody to really feel like they're getting in touch with you quick and they're having a good customer service experience. So a really good example, a story about why this has been a really pressing topic for me the last couple of weeks is I had a contractor, slowing down for the winter, like we all are right now, and was really seeking out some additional leads, started pouring money into Google Ads and Google pay-per-click. When we looked at it 2 or 3 months later, we realized that he was sinking a bunch of money into it. He was getting very few leads, first off, so that was a problem. But out of the leads that he was getting, the conversion rates were abysmal, and he was trying to figure out why. And then come to find out, a friend of his called because they needed some service, and they told him, hey, man, I've been on the phone for like 2 minutes, and nobody's picked up the phone yet. Like, I sent him a screenshot of how long the phone. So this guy was using a call service, right? Which a lot of us use. And that's a good first step into trying to have a human, trying to have somebody available. But we all know that the truth is sometimes that doesn't work as effectively as we want. Like the idea about having a person at the end of a phone to talk to somebody and get them scheduled doesn't always work the way that we intend it to. Any kind of delays like that, or if somebody, there's a lot of people who don't want to call and talk to somebody to get basic information, want to have some information handed to them because we're used to being able to have that stuff accessible to us no matter what.
Right. So
there's some arguments to be made here that where we can put in little automations and little bots that are made to ghost as us and feel like a person, send that video. That's hitting all of the notes that we really need, which is speed to lead. We need a speedy response and immediacy whenever somebody reaches out to you for help. We want them to see faces. We want them to hear a voice that's warm, that's calming, welcoming, that late night DJ voice, as Chris would say, and never split the difference. We want somebody who's going to make them feel comforted and is saying, hey, like, let's move this process along. So that was the other thing I wanted to mention is like, when we're thinking about an effective sales process, what we're trying to do is create progress. We're trying to move somebody down a pipeline. So I always kind of think of it like the TSA at the airport, funnily enough, because I always think about the TSA as like it's security theater, right? That's we call it security theater because all it is very powerful signals. It's like you're going to stand in line, you're going to wait. There are people of authority right here. They've got uniforms,
badges.
They've got badges. They've got, some of them have guns. They're like, you know, you're going to walk through metal. You're going to pass all your stuff through things. We're going to hold you up. We're going to jostle.
Yeah, no over 3 ounces. Can't be over 3 ounces.
We're like very firm boundaries. And it's funny because all of those things are just stacking signals to make people feel safer, right?
Yep.
Make people feel like there's something effective happening here. Obviously, we're not trying to create security theater in our businesses, but the message about signals is really, really important. We're trying to create progress signals as early as we can for someone because they need to feel like they're making progress to stay engaged in the conversation with you, to get to the point where now you can close the sale in person. So progress signals. Where can we put those in for people to make sure that we're making the most of that leverage and that first contact?
Yeah, I think the art of sales, and you know, I'm in a sales role largely as well. The art of sales is like taking a true, earnest understanding of where the person you're working with wants to go. Like, really put yourself in their shoes, and have a genuine curiosity about where they want to go. You know, like, is this where you want? Is this a problem or is that a problem? Like, tell me more. You know, a prospective customer can understand if that's theater or not in a lot of ways. You can't. It's hard to fake it. It's hard to fake those general or the genuine type of like curiosity, I'm here to help type of stuff.
Right. Well, and
so
like,
you really have to work hard at it.
the proof is in the pudding, right? So if you're the kind of person who's thinking about how do I signal progress and how do I signal intention to this person, if you're thinking about that, you're like, I'm going to use this tool to get in touch with people quickly so they feel heard. I'm going to use this tool to show them who we are so that they can see us and they feel comfortable. You know, I'm going to use this tool to get information from them so that we're better equipped and more knowledgeable. Those are signals, they're powerful signals, but just the fact that you're thinking about it and deploying those signals means that you are the person that they're looking for, right?
Yeah.
You are the one who's thinking those things through. There's a really good Facebook comment that came in here. Are you able to see that, Jeff?
Yes. Yeah.
You want to read it and respond to it?
Yeah. So it is definitely generational, which I assume it means virtual versus 70 to 80% of my clients still expect and want the contractor to do the legwork on an estimate. Some people in the ease like the ease of video, et cetera. However, most still consider the CYA aspect of the contractor doing all the work. I think what we have seen generally, one, I've yet to do like really push on this, but sometimes we get contractors say like, well, my customer base is really, you know, skews older. I'm like, well, what, you know, major metro do you live in? And if it's not like Tampa, Florida, then I push back because like, it's like there's young people and old people everywhere, you know, like it's kind of just how the world works. But I mean, Tampa, like, okay, you got me, right? Or you know, a little further south, wherever I'm thinking, the retirement zones, right? But I think that's true. Part of it is, you know, how do you want to run your process as well? There's a delicate balance there. Like, I want to run it like this versus like what's convenient and effective and interesting, and you know what moves the customer along. But yeah, I mean, generally we do see some hesitancy from older customers, but largely what we hear more is that contractors think that there's hesitancy and place that hesitancy on the homeowner who might be a little bit older, and so that I think that's more so what we have seen in practice. The concern is much more elevated than the actual problem or challenge itself. That's what we've seen.
Well, and I think the key point to remember here is that we're not talking about closing off options, right?
That's
We're
right.
opening up options
Yes.
for engagement. So really the guiding principle here is you need, at every opportunity, you need to be incredibly fast at putting the ball back in the customer's court to control the engagement,
Yes.
to control
Yes.
the feeling of how they're interacting with you. So in something like this, it's a request. It's not like a demand. They don't have to send information like this, but we do know that whenever something's set up and this is the default, most people are going to go with it. So it is true that the hesitancy that we're projecting on people is really largely not there. You might occasionally get somebody that's like, I don't really want to do that. And that's fine. You just adapt and adopt. And that's another opportunity there to say, hey, that's fine. We're here to do things the way that you want them done. So let's find another way to talk about this.
It's a great point. I mean, I'll tell you, so here's a simple example from my perspective. Let's say I'm on the phone or on a demo with a business owner or maybe a sales manager or something like that. Likely that's going to take another meeting for us to, get everybody comfortable with the system. So, hey, you can try it out, whatever. I could ask the question of or say something like, well, it seems like we're going to go ahead and need another meeting here. So what day works for you for us to get everybody on another Zoom call?
Mm-hmm.
Or I could say, hey, sometimes we've seen that more people might need to see things and get involved in the process. Do you think that a follow-up meeting might make sense? Do you think, what would be the right next step here, do you think? Mm-hmm. Very different. Like one is like not assuming, it's slightly more passive, honestly. But it's putting the ball back in their court, right? Like how do you think is best to proceed here? Yeah. So it's the same thing. And I will tell you, we do have contractors who do absolutely say, hey, I'm not going out there unless you send me something. They don't say it like that. They say, hey, this is our process. We found that this is valuable and, helps us, address the needs of our customers in the best way we can, the best way that we can.
Yeah.
The truth is spinning it towards the benefit of like, hey, this is something that could be really helpful. We found that this is the case is typically runs a little bit better and you get information faster.
Yeah.
That is the thing that we come up with.
And that's the thing too, Terry, that I want to say to address your comment, which I think is really valid, which is that people are reaching out to a professional because they want the professional to step in and do this for them, right? There's not like, I don't want a ton of legwork. I don't want to have to take measurements for you. And so that's a really good distinction to make. We're not asking people to do the estimate for us. Instead, what we want to think about here from an effective sales process and effective positioning idea is that effective sales is all about, like Jeff mentioned earlier, finding out what they want and what they need so that you can speak to that. So this is an invitation to tell me more. Tell me more about your thoughts. Tell me more about what you want. Tell me more about what you're concerned about. They don't even have to walk you through the project. Like every minute that you keep a prospect on a video or on a call talking to you and telling you more about their project, the better equipped you are in that negotiation to step forward and close that deal. Because every word that they tell you is a word that you can use as information that you have to deliver exactly what it is that they're asking you for and communicate that you understand that. And that's really what's going to close the deal and make for an effective sale. Which leads me into, I'm going to drop a quick note here and then we'll actually jump back to it. But we have a really good resource for you guys today. So whenever Jeff and I were talking about sales process, we were talking about how we wanted to give you guys something if you were tuning in and you found the conversation interesting. So we collected and found a really great book summary for a book on communication that is also super relevant for sales process, which is Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. So Chris Voss was a former FBI negotiator, kidnapping negotiator, like very high stakes conversationalist is how I think about Chris Voss. His book is great. Some of you guys are probably familiar with it. Why you should be excited about the book summary is a couple of reasons. So the summary that we're going to send out to you guys, and I'll actually drop the link right now in the chat. So most of you guys should be able to see the link in the chat on the different platforms. You should also be able to see it in the show notes. So I put it in the show notes there. If you haven't read the book yet, this is a great primer for all of the main points in it. So whenever we send you the link for this resource, basically the link is going to take you to a place, give me a couple bits of info. I'm going to follow up and send you a copy of the summary. The summary has an audio summary. It's like usually 25, 30 minutes. It's got about a 15-page book summary, and it's got a really handy infographic. Yes, somebody chimed in. He has an amazing masterclass if you guys want to check that out. But the summary is a really great recap and actually a really great general educational foundation for everything that he teaches. So if you haven't read his book yet, if you haven't seen the masterclass, the summary is going to really teach you everything that you need to know. If you have seen that book in the masterclass, it's a really great refresher. And there's an infographic piece of that. So if you guys want to share this with your teams, these book summaries and this service that I'm using, that I'm giving you guys the resource from, I use this a ton with trainings with my own team and with contractors that I'm working with, because they're more accessible, right? Like, it's hard to ask somebody to sit down and read an entire book. So this is a really great way of getting that information in people's hands faster. You can review the entirety of the book summary in like one meeting with your team if you wanted to do that. So we're hoping that it's going to be really useful for you guys. All you got to do is click the link, send me a little info. I'll follow up with a download link for you, and then tell me how you liked it, because I can get a lot more of these for you guys as we go along.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just saw this a bit ago, and if just the kind of the visual summary of the book is really solid. I took a negotiations course, and a lot of what he teaches here is, yes, negotiations 101, but it's useful in relationships, it's useful in sales, it's useful with team members. It's really, really, really good stuff. One of the other resources that I personally cite a lot is a guy named Josh Braun. He posts on LinkedIn a lot. He's a sales coach, but really has good stuff. One of the things that I'm not sure if he's interviewed Chris Voss several times, but the thing that I'm not sure is here that I think is really helpful. Chris Voss, hostage negotiator, right? So like, these are high stakes. What is typically not the case is that in a sales process, which is a negotiation, kind of, right? Like for a painting project, not high stakes. so one of the
it's do or die. Like, we sell or we go hungry, man. Like, that's pretty high stakes. It's not as immediate of stakes.
Yeah, correct. However, if you treat it as high stakes, you get what Josh Braun would call commission breath. Nobody likes commission breath.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
So are you leaning in and doing the hard close? Like, that doesn't really work as like a primary sales strategy, I will say.
Yeah.
There's a lean back that I've seen work, right? Yeah. But in general, what Josh Braun says, his term is detached from the outcome. So, hey, it's okay. If we don't
come to terms,
we don't get anywhere, like, that's okay. I understand. I just want to help you if we can.
Yeah. And that's exactly.
That is a powerful sales dynamic to strike. Again, I'm not sure if that necessarily relates to the Chris Voss stuff, but
it does. That's the core of what Chris Voss is teaching too. He's saying that, like, coming from this area of the most high stakes conversations you can be having, the number one guiding principle that you need to follow is you need to de-escalate that scenario, because nobody is making good decisions, and progress doesn't happen when there's high level tension. Things aren't going to go your way. So he's consistently talking about, how do you de-escalate things? How do you make the other person feel empowered? Because they're going to be a lot more coachable to the outcome that you want when they feel empowered. So those elements we were talking about earlier about, when you're selling to someone, they feel vulnerable. They don't feel like they have as much power. These are really valuable ways to make them feel like they're getting some of that power back in the sales process, which makes them comfortable knowing that, hey, I'm designing this solution. This is not something someone's putting on me. This is a choice that I'm making. It's a plan that I'm forming. Those are all really important. So yeah, there's a lot of pieces in there that I think is super valuable for you guys. We actually have a couple more comments here. So let's take a minute and talk to the people. Terry's chiming back in. We were talking about virtual sales and whether customers really want virtual sales. And kind of a quick recap, Terry was talking about a specific scenario where, somebody sold a client some doors that was not relevant for that client's order. Terry was on site for something probably unrelated and managed to really save that client a lot of headache. And was just making the point that it does take a combo of on-site and video. I totally agree. Obviously, we're doing it in-person projects. We're doing work on the ground with people. Virtual sales is never going to completely replace that in-person interaction, and in-person is really important. But I think that you're well situated if you're considering these virtual sales tools as a way of getting to the on-site, right? Yeah. Showing up at the on-site as best prepared as you can to give them the experience that you want them to have when your sales team's on the ground.
Yeah. There's, certain projects, you can get a quick number out, but what we have seen is that's less the case. A lot of customers want to know ballpark numbers, right? And I know lots of painters and other contractors don't like to do that, but mostly it's because they don't have very good information. With our system and with other tactics, you can get some good information and start to, again, be a trusted partner in the process. Like, hey, typically we think it's between this and this. Like, I'd love to come take a look, but just to let you know, that's the budget range that we typically see for something like that. So, but then, most of the time there is a complement of in person that usually makes sense.
I think that embracing a fully virtual sales process, or at least some element of a fully virtual sales process, that works really well for certain archetypes of businesses. If you have a ton of leads coming through, you're really well booked out, embracing an all virtual sales process for at least a portion of your leads can be really effective for you, because now it's a more efficient spend of time and effort for your sales team, right? Yep. Because again, it's okay to say no. It's okay if it's not the best fit for them. It's okay if you don't manage to close it. Obviously, you want that to be as good of a virtual virtual estimating process as possible. You want to avoid problems down the line. But for those guys, using it as a little bit more of a screening tool and a lead qualification tool, super useful. For everyone that really wants to get to that on-site for every single lead, this is a way of making it more likely that you're going to get that on-site appointment, and make it a lot more likely that you're going to show up in a way that that customer is going to really appreciate, and it's just going to put you on better footing for the entirety of that call. We've got a couple more really good comments. So we've got Scaremoose. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
Scaremoose, I think.
Scaremoose, yes.
I like it.
Coming in from Twitch. So this was a good question, asking, isn't the understanding of the difference between an open and a closed question that's the basis for the outcome of a sales conversation, besides what we know about body language and attitude? So kind of reframe that question. When we're having a sales interaction, we got to pay attention to people's body language. We want to pay attention to their attitude, their tone. And then whenever we're in a salesperson position, or if we're doing communication facilitation and anything, so if you're managing people or whatever, the difference between these open and closed questions. So I'm going to articulate my understanding of how I think about an open question versus a closed question.
Yeah.
So an open question is going to be, I'm asking you something like, Jeff, what's important to you about this project that you're thinking about? Right? Yep. So that's not leading you in any particular area. It's very open. It's an opportunity for you to sit there and think. And it's also an opportunity for me to sit there and think and be probably a little bit more discerning about your response. So I do think that there's a place for open questions and closed questions in the sales process. It's just at different phases. A closed question is going to be a leading question. I'm going to ask you something and I'm expecting a yes or a no. Or I'm going to ask you something and I'm going to present two options and I want to pick two or three and I want you to pick one. So a closed question in a lot of ways has to be a lot more strategic, because you're trying to frame a closed question to get a certain response a lot of the time. So the way that I think about this in a sales process or any kind of communication is, you want to start open and get as much feedback from them as possible. You want to let people use their own words. You want to let them tell you what's important, what their fears are. Hopes and fears, guys, hopes and dreams, hopes and fears. So open questions early on are absolutely what you want. And when we're talking about these virtual video sales, hey, send me a video, tell me some info. Don't ask them to measure their walls, right? Ask them for high level information. what are you excited about? Like, what are you concerned about? What kind of
Right.
stuff are you hoping to accomplish here? So that they can tell you what's important, and then you mirror that and you tell them that they're heard by expressing that back to them. And then when you get later on in your closing, that's when you start using more closed questions, because you're leading them in a direction. But it's important that you use it as a question, because like you'll see in the resource from Chris Voss, by using closed questions, you're going to be much more effective at leading them in a direction, but having them feel like they're the ones coming up with the solution. They're the ones designing the project. Do you have any additional feedback on open closed questions, Jeff, and how you think about that?
I'm still getting better at this. I have, one of the things I've learned about asking questions is asking organic questions, or at least getting good at making them genuinely feel organic. So,
Right.
you know, asking a rehearsed set of questions can feel kind of rehearsed, right?
For sure.
So like being in a spot where you can ask two versions of the same question, if it is, especially if it's open-ended, I think you get better responses from that. It feels a little bit more organic. And maybe you also structure a question in the way of like, well, question one, open-ended. Another way to ask that question is, the reason to do kind of a two-parter is because it gives them the time to think.
Yeah.
It gives them time to formulate an answer. Because if you say like, do you have any questions? Like, I don't know. You might say, no, I threw a lot at you. You might have some questions here. Does anything come to mind? Sometimes we get questions on this thing or that thing. Is there anything related to this that you have questions on that I could help fill in some blanks on? It's a little bit more of a lengthy question, but I think especially when you're asking those open questions, and this is probably more towards the end of the sales conversation too, it's almost another version of a closed question, because it makes them think a little bit more on a specific answer. And maybe, do you have any questions in the great example there? But I think there's like some skill to even asking the questions.
Oh yeah. I feel like we can do a whole episode on like questions, how to do how to frame them. Really good information in the resource from Chris Voss specifically on that, like how to ask questions, how to frame them, how to think about them. Yeah, so interesting. Like there's a question is an opportunity it's like a fork in the road, right? I love that Yogi Bear saying, like, when you come to a fork in the road, take it, right? So, that's what you're doing whenever you're asking somebody a question, is like you're putting a decision on them. And definitely the way that you frame that, you can have a lot more options or you can have fewer. And if you know that there's a particular point that you need to arrive at, then obviously, that's the time to start closing the questions a little bit more. So that one way or the other, you're creating progress, and it's not just constantly this kind of open-ended thing. So we got some really great chats and comments. I think that we are probably at time for today. I don't see any other specific questions coming through. Do you have any closing thoughts, Jeff?
Oh man, putting me on the spot here.
No.
I think
gonna finish strong.
I don't know. I think there's one of the other things that I'll put out there is when I talk to groups of contractors, do events like Crank or whatever else, there's increasingly a group of folks who are down for the new way of doing it. But I will say that in our technology, maybe not even just our technology, but like in general, small business owners are adopting technology in innovation in general at alarming rates, especially when it comes to anything that's like, kind of virtual or like automation type of stuff. So whether it's our stuff or whatever else, like whatever process or like thing that you're doing, and you can't boil the ocean, you can't solve all your problems, but heading into 2023, think about something that you want to get better at. If you're, 3 years from sailing off in the sunset or 2 years from that, like maybe you just keep it the same. But like if you want to grow your business, if you want to improve, think about a different way that you could be doing things. Challenge yourself. Look into technology. Peer groups and Crank and all these other events are like really good for just like exposing yourself to stuff. So I think that's the challenge I'd give specifically to the painting industry, because it's like there's a lot of overthinking, I think, in the painting industry. And man, sometimes it's just, there's ways to do things better, and be open-minded to them.
Really great takeaway. A lot of innovation, you guys, and we know that at some point you gotta adapt. You gotta adopt some new ways of doing things so that we can keep moving the industry forward, keep elevating the industry, and therefore elevating the customer experience. So last thing I'm going to say to you guys, don't forget, look in the show notes for the link to our free resource, the book summary from Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. It'll be in the chat. It'll be in the show notes. If you're listening to this when the audio hits the podcast, it'll be in the show notes on the podcast as well. Download the resource and then come back and comment and tell us how much you loved it. Thanks for chiming in, you guys.